In this video, with no specific lesson in mind, what I'm going to do is build a scene from scratch, and it's going to incorporate some kind of mysterious space pyramid because I've been asked about that. And what I'm looking at is general considerations about lighting and composition and camera angles, that kind of thing. So I could go to the create shelf and just create a pyramid, but that will be a bit boring. So I'm going to use the terrain. Hold the control key down, click on the terrain, and that'll create it in default grey. I'm going to edit the terrain and raise its resolution, and I'm also going to set it to solid because I'm going to use HDRI lighting in this, and if sometimes the light can get through the back of bumpy materials, so solid prevents that from happening with terrains. And I'm going to modify this to have some detail on it. So what I'm going to do is go new, invert. I'm going to lower it down a bit so that it's not fully white. You can see in the preview there. I'm going to use some of the brushes here to put some detail on it. So I've got some of these random patches, and you can see the brush is scalable using this control here, so I can scale it to about the size of the frame. I'm going to put it so that these are poking out of the surface. I've not got very much flow on, and I'm going to keep them hard edged, so I'll just get this and plop it down once on there, so you can see it's added a few patches on there. And now I've done that, I'm going to reset to my default brush so I know where I am, and then I'm just going to take this and use square edges in its default setting, and that will turn it into a pyramid shape. So I think I've done everything I need to do in there, so I'll check out and I'll raise the point of this up and give it a quick render, and you can see what I've got there. So it's just added a bit of surface detail to my pyramid shape. I don't know what those things may be. I'm going to now take this and I'm just going to scale my view back from above and enlarge this a bit and lift it up so it's on the ground. So there's my pyramid in the distance. It's not looking particularly mysterious yet, but we're only in a default scene. I'm going to put in another terrain now, I think for some kind of sand dune effect. So maybe I don't need this infinite plane, so I could just convert that to a terrain. And then if I hold Control and Alt and click on one of these controls, it'll pop back into its usual scale, and I can enlarge that and make that sort of fit my scene better. So I'm just rotating it so it more or less matches the field of view, and I'm looking north. And then I'm going to scale it to be of an appropriate scale. So I'll take this down so it's not covering up too much of my pyramid, and then I'm going to modify the material to one of the saved materials that you can get on Bryce5.com that I shared out. So it's just a material that I've made and shared out, and it's just white sand, so just to give it some sort of texture, and that looks about the right scale for this terrain, so that's good. So I'm going to edit the terrain now and give it fractal. Let's see, rounded dunes might be appropriate, so I'll just click on this button until I get sufficient frequency of duniness. I don't know what the appropriate term is there. I'll lower that down, lower it down a bit more, see where my camera is. So if I go too low, it's not going to work out for me, so I'll get this one and I'll lift it a little bit, and then I'll lift my camera a bit. I just made it a bit more pointy, that's all there. And you can see now I've got my duney effect. I'm just trying to choose appropriate. So I've not positioned this pyramid in the middle for compositional reasons, because that might be a bit boring. In terms of setting the horizon up, I think I might go for a tilted back view and feature the sky. So I suppose my next consideration now is what kind of sky I'm going to use, and I'm going to use something from a product that Horror and I have made. So this is Deep Space HDRI, and I'm going to just pick that out of my, let's see, I think I've got it in my presets here. So I've already sorted this out. So I've got some presets that come with the product. So I'll go for this goldeny coloured sky and see how that looks. So I'll give that a quick render. So that's made quite a radical difference. I can't really see my pyramid now, it's getting lost a bit in the haze, and it could do with the material appropriate to something spacey. So I'll just pick something out of my library. So I've got one that's based on, I think in here, I think got a techno-y one. So that's got sort of techno patterns in it, and the effect is run by ambient, so I'll make sure I've got some ambient to run this effect. Okay, so I saw the sand light up a bit when I did the ambient, which may or may not be something I want. So I'm going to modify the terrain material now and just take the ambient out of the sand, because I've got the HDRI lighting to do that for me. So I think I want the sun just here in the sky, and then I'll turn the pyramid so it can strike that edge. So if I hold Control and Alt and double click on the sun, and then Control and Alt and left click on the scene, I can place my sun exactly there, so I can get some idea, and then I'll just rotate my terrain around a bit so it's just striking this edge here to give it a highlight. The rest will be in shadow, and it's got my techno material on there that's just creating some illusion that something's going off on this surface. So it's not looking too bad. Possibly that's getting a little bit too lost in the haze setting, so I'll go in here and go to atmosphere and reduce this setting. So let's call that, let's try 25. I don't know if that's going to be ideal, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so you can see a bit more of this. Now the Skylab's got the HDRIs saved in their lowest resolution format, which is why it looks a bit blurry. So to improve that appearance of the sky, if I go to image-based lighting, I can load in the high resolution version of the sky. So this is Sky 01, so this is my high resolution version here. Take a moment to load in. Now when you load in a HDRI image, it automatically turns off the sun, which I want to use, so I'll turn the sun back on, and also the atmosphere, the haze setting, gets turned off. So you just have to be aware that some things get reset. In fact, I'll just check we're going to add to the sky, so add to the sky also gets reset. So I'll just give this a quick render now and see how that looks. So I think I've restored everything, and now I've got a high resolution image. It doesn't look too bad. It's still, I think I could add another effect yet. It's still looking a bit plain. I've got a few things going. Lighting's not too bad. This air's got quite a strong sunlight effect, so I don't mind that. The haze is hiding what's going on here in the horizon, which is okay. So I think what I'll do is I'll take a risk and try and add a special effect. So if I'm going to add a ground plane and hold the control key down so it comes in default grey, and modify the attributes of this ground plane so it's linked to track the camera position, and if I put it at +Y, it'll lift it up vertically in front of me. So now wherever I place this, it'll face the camera. I'm going to take this plane and I'm going to move it so that it's behind my pyramid, like so, and then modify the material to turn it into a lens. So make it fully transparent, get rid of the diffuse, and turn the refraction down to, well, I don't know, let's try 50. Now when you've got low refraction like this, it creates some weird optical effects because we're dropping below the level that you can get in you know, you couldn't create a lens like this. So I think the only equivalent effect that you could get like this is if you were in water and you had an air bubble, then you sort of get this kind of effect going on. So this will create a bit of a lensing effect, and it'll adjust how the light, well, passes through this infinite plane. So you can see I've created like a bubble, but around here as well it's affecting, but you can't see that very clearly because what it'll do, it'll affect the cloud plane, and I've not turned the cloud plane on. So I'm going to say this is like some kind of force field around my pyramid, and I can modify the size of this by modifying the material. So if I make this value smaller, it'll shrink it down. When it gets to 0, we're in a different optical world again. So just I'll try it at that size, for example. Maybe I'll have it slightly bigger. Okay, so this is where just a few compositional choices are occurring. So I'll just pop that round there. So I've not bothered with changing my field of view. It needs to be fairly wide, even with this high resolution backdrop, to make things look sharp. But that's why the pyramid maybe seems to be leaning slightly over to the left here. I mean, you can correct that by tilting the pyramid, and in actual fact by setting it off straight you can make it look upright. You have similar problems with the moon and the sun in Bryce, so I'm just trying to find my plane again, where they don't look perfectly spherical when they're off centre, and you can just cover them up with a volumetric disc, which is covered in another video that I did recently. So now our next consideration is, dare I turn the clouds on? I don't know what the clouds are like for this sky, so we'll just give it a go because what happens when this is in, it affects the way the clouds work. So what I'll do is I'll just hide this infinite plane for a moment, and then turn the clouds on normally. So just click, I'll have to lift that up, and that'll engage the clouds. Or it does or it doesn't sometimes, it depends. Okay, if I hold the Alt key down and click on that, it should engage them. I can't remember how to turn the clouds on. I'll have to go into the Skylab, I think. Right, let's try the cumulus. Okay, let's try the strata. The stratas are a bit weird, so I'll not have those. I'll have the cumulus clouds and see how that looks in my scene. So now I've got these clouds in the scene. That they're quite ordinary looking clouds, and I wanted something a bit more exotic, which is why I put this special effect in here. So I'll just unhide that, and then you can see that it has a rather dramatic effect on the way it interacts with the cloud plane. So the clouds now seem to get stretched up, and you can use that in a couple of ways, because you can go from fixed cloud to spherical clouds and have different effects. So they would look quite ordinary under most circumstances, but when you put this infinite plane in with its effect, then you get these strange distortions. I think I preferred it when we were on the fixed ones. So we go. Well, it's just turning that off actually, I think. Yeah, it's not the fact that the cloud plane's fixed, that's an animation thing. I don't really know much about animation, so I'll leave that alone. Okay, so let's thicken the cloud up a bit. Oh, that's far too much. Okay, turn that back again. Oh, I can change the cloud colour. So let's have a look at what colours I've got in my sky. It's got this red colour, and then I could pick one of these reds out for some more dramatic effect. Let's make that even more. See if I go to HLS, I can change that. I just hold Alt and click on the colour swatch if you want this particular control. So I've got a dramatic red streaks in the clouds now, and this sandy effect. I think we're close. I'd like that to be a bit stronger, so possibly the haze is hiding that. So go back into atmosphere and reduce the thickness. They can't modify the density very easily because it's already down at 1, so let's try 20. That'll allow the clouds to become more visible and a bit more of what's going off in our scene. So again, I've gone on for long enough now, so I would say that's it for this particular example. So that's one way you might choose to set up a sort of science fiction effect scene using Deep Space HDRI and a special effect lens and a couple of terrains and appropriate material choices that you can either you can pick out of the library or build yourself. In this case I picked this one out of the library, and this is one that I put together myself. It's one of these techno is the basis of that texture. You have to have a look at the other videos that I've done about creating materials and using the deep texture editor to get an idea, or use an image texture, which is the easier option, but you're more likely to see repeats in the texture. So I suppose one other thing I could have considered doing was turning off the shadow casting for the HDRI backdrop, since it's not really being used very much to create complex shadow regions, but generally speaking it's always a compromise. If you turn off the shadow casting in for the HDRI lighting, then you'll degrade the contrast in your scene. You'll have much faster rendering. It's probably a good thing for outdoor scenes, but not so much for scenes where you've got, you know, concave surfaces, so where you've got interiors that the light's trying to get into, then it's not appropriate for the light to travel through it like that. So if we had a cave that we were looking into, then you would probably want to avoid turning off the HDRI shadow casting. But if you've just got fairly rugged terrains that are exposed entirely to the sky, providing the light levels are fairly low that are coming from the HDRI, then you can get away with turning the shadow casting off, and it will look about right, as long as you've got fully intense shadow casting coming from your sun. Under most circumstances I wouldn't recommend lowering the intensity of the global shadow casting, which is found in the Skylab under the sun-moon control, anything below 100, because that's just letting light through solid objects, and that would show up quite quickly and affect the overall quality of your render. Anyway, I think that's about it. I've said all I meant to say, I think. That's the end of the video. Hope you found that interesting, useful, and that you'll have a go at doing something like this in your own scenes.